Voodoo, Anansi be telling you, if you wanna be a fierce Frostsaber, we done gotta work on that, okay? Good. Now, you need to be practicing being all fierce-like. You just as strong as them other Frostsabers we done seen in Winter Spring, right? Right. See this stick? Pretend it be a human or a gnome to done be attacking. Eyes of the tiger, Voodoo! Eyes of the tiger! Good job, Voodoo. You done killed that stick, Nancy be meaning. You done killed that gnome real good.
Do-de-do-de-do.
Voodoo, now, you ready? Go for the eyes, Voodoo! Go for the eyes!
Well, hello there, little kitten. Aren't you just the teeniest little thing?
Voodoo, you done supposed to attack them. Bite their kneecaps off. Don't rub their kneecaps off.
What a sweet kitten you've got there, troll. Who's a cutie? Who's a cutie? Yo 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 yo. Okay. Well, have a nice day. Goodbye. Do-de-do-de-do.
Yes, Voodoo, you done be the fiercest Frostsaber around.
Hearthstone Tavern, a Warcraft RP podcast, highlighting the RP in MMORPG. Welcome. This is Susanna, aka Stardancer, and you are listening to Hearthstone Tavern Roleplay Podcast number 5. This week's topic is villains. In this episode, the cast discusses what a villain is, the various categories of villains, and how to write, plan, and or roleplay a villain. We follow up this discussion with cast members identifying the villains we love to hate in the World of Warcraft. We have a few regular segments from the cast. Richard Therian presents Lore Library. Ria's Corner gives us tips for attire in the Well-Dressed Roleplayer. If you are new to our show or have listened before, we start each show with an opening audio snippet before the main title. This is usually written and performed by a cast member. Since we are all role players, we also incorporate a role-played comedy drama before we head into the main part of the show or our roundtables. In previous episodes, our drama centered around our various WoW characters on their way to the Hearthstone Tavern. This week we are doing something a little different with the dramas. We are introducing short role-played segments dealing with the show's main topic. Lots of great stuff in this episode, so kick back, grab your mug, and have a great time.
All right, let's get this started. Quiet down, please. I said quiet down! Shut up! Now, I wish to welcome you all to the formation of my new guild, Disciples of Overlord Ironmaul. I am Overlord Ironmaul, your new Lord and Master, and together we will achieve great and terrible things. Our goal is nothing short of eventual world domination through intimidation, manipulation, and applied violence. This is my first officer, Dark Tantrum, who will be assisting with placement and orientation.
Nice to meet you all.
We will start with an interview process for job placement. Applicants for the position of Chief Kneebreaker, please form a line at that small stack of clubs.
You can go first.
Very good. Now, all other applicants seeking to become henchmen in our illustrious guild.
That's hench person.
Fine, hench person. Please form 2 lines at those tables and have your references ready.
Hench person? What the hell?
Don't even get me started, Dark. I'd rather deal with Illidan than a defamation attorney again.
This is Brent, a.k.a. Sullivan.
Susanna, I play Star Dancer.
I'm Harper, a.k.a. Pyrus.
I'm the player of Cormac. People call me Mox for short.
I'm Mike, the person who plays Anansi.
Hi, I'm Rhea. I play Lania.
Hey, this is Matt, a.k.a. Taldarion Shatterbound.
I'm Richard, otherwise known as Therian Gracier.
Something that Mox talked about on his character development, he discussed the idea of having an antagonist as a part of your character story. What is the mindset that you have to be in order to play that as a player character? So I wanted to do a little bit of discussion on that, and I wanted to also find out if any of you all have played a villain as an antagonist. But I wanted to go ahead and talk about what the definition of a villain is, and it's not necessarily what everybody assumes it is. There's a level of depth involved in creating a villain. So I thought we could talk a little bit about that, and then the definition of a villain is an uncouth person, a deliberate scoundrel or criminal, a character in a story or play who opposes the hero. And this is some classifications of a villain. There's the mastermind, the thug, the anti-hero, a radical or a zealot, and the insane villain. And there's probably others. I was just kind of brainstorming a little bit. Would it be possible for you all to give me an example of some of those villains, either in World of Warcraft if you've seen them, or in another setting that might be more accessible for people to understand?
I, for one, like villains that have a little bit of a depth to them. So the first villain that I would bring up, and I'm not really sure, maybe you guys can tell me where you think he belongs, Edwin Van Cleef. You know, everybody knows the end of Deadmines, Van Cleef, pay big for your heads. But what exactly does, where do you think somebody like Van Cleef fit?
Ultimately, he's a mastermind. If you follow that story, that's effectively what he's been doing this entire time.
He's also an anti-hero.
Yeah, yes he is.
And I think that's kind of what I see with him, too, is the anti-hero side of him. You know, here's a guy who is doing villainous things because he's trying to, in his mind at least, I think, make the world a better place, make the world more fair for something that happened to him that was terrible. For those who don't know.
Well, I was going to say that the irony is that the things that really turned him villainous were also done by another villain, which is kind of amusing when you take a step back and you actually look at that entire situation, because the reason that he's so upset, those core reasons were there because of Onyxia, because of Katrana Prester. I mean, she succeeded in her villainy by, doing exactly what Deathwing told her to do, which was just to disrupt, the human kingdoms. And in doing so, in fighting his little war, he's fighting, but he really is fighting against another villain. I just don't think anyone realizes that at the time of the whole.
Well, and even more interestingly, the group that he masterminds, the Defias, who are big villains in the game, end up eventually working with the Black Dragons to kidnap Barry and Wren way back in the WoW's past now.
Yeah, but they didn't know it at the time.
They had absolutely no idea. I don't think the Defias know still that they were technically working for the person who made them into the Defias by working for Katrana Prestor.
All right, what about Staghelm? What sort of villain does he portray? And is he a villain, and what constitutes that?
I got a lot to say about Staghelm. When
I would say that he's not a villain yet. He's just an ass.
Well, he's messing with things he really shouldn't be messing with. You can find that down in Feathermoon.
Yeah, he's doing something, but has he actually done anything yet? I mean,
I believe he has. I believe he's done a lot of things. I believe he's got voices whispering in his head, urging him on. I think he had everything to do with Malfurion and Stormrage disappearing. So that he could get the tree made, and I think the tree is made for the sole purpose of the demons have something to snack on when they get back over here.
Would you consider him a radical or a zealot in that case?
Oh, he's a complete zealot, and I think the same voices that are urging him on to greatness were the ones that corrupted Deathwing.
Old gods.
The old gods, you mean?
Possibly.
I have a theory about Staghelm. Because having played an elf for a long time, you encounter bits and pieces of a story that makes you wonder if he is really in league with the demon forces, or if his mind has been taken over by the forces that want him to create a world tree because that's how they live, that's how they survive, that's a way of bringing back the main demonic overlords and all kinds of things. So, and even when you start as a new elf and you encounter these little tiny demons here and there, and you're wondering, okay, here we have our archdruid, and he's just ranting about Tyrande. What are you doing? There's the trees is ransacked. The tree's got some problems. What are we doing about that? And it just makes you really wonder, maybe he's not altogether here.
There's definitely something wrong with him, and I do know that at some point I think the WoW comic itself might touch upon that, because they kind of led to that a couple issues back, and they haven't done it since. The one thing I wonder, though, is whether or not he actually is tied to the old gods, because he does seem to harbor a lot of hatred towards the Karaji for effectively ripping his son in half in front of his eyes, which leads me to believe that if he's siding with anyone, it might not actually be the old gods, because that seems like such a strong influence in his life, and that's kind of what's driven him to this point. He wants his son back. You know, he got angry at the dragon flights and whatnot. If there is anything, then it might be something else entirely than the old gods. But that could be
Sargeras, maybe.
It's possible. Now that he's kind of back a little bit, it's possible it could just be some other random demon, or he could just be completely selfish and in it for his own glory, his own purpose.
I could see that.
He's a lot of speculation. I mean, he's a very speculative character. Personally, I would like nothing better than for him to turn up as a big bad in WoW, or not necessarily a big bad, but I would really love it if Night Elves got to invade Darnassus and put a stop to him the way that the Horde went after Varimathras.
Oh, that would be
fantastic.
fantastic.
I would love that. I would fanboy just a little bit there over Blizzard if they did that. But
yeah, we'll put that raid together.
As of right now, I don't know that it's there that we can do that, I don't think we can say just yet that he's the bad guy.
Evil sometimes will rationalize their actions as good. Sometimes, depending on where they are on their path, even if they had quote-unquote good intentions, sometimes that can actually be seen as evil or is evil in disguise.
Would that be another classification possibly, that maybe you have your inadvertent villain, the one who thinks they're doing good but is doing it that results in evil? So is that another classification possibly?
That's just like
Misguided.
Arthas.
Or parts of the Scarlet Crusade, the ones that had not been affected by whatever other influences there are. If they're thinking they were doing the right thing, but the only problem is that almost kind of borders on the fanatical at that particular point. It just depends on the circumstances, because every villain comes from a different path. Things happen in their lives, much like how we were talking about the Arthas book. Certain things come into play, certain cards are dealt, and that shuffles the deck. Someone who is working on or becoming a pillar of society or trying to help people and be a hero can inadvertently stray, either through actions done to them or their own actions thinking those are correct. There's a lot that can happen in the background.
Well, one thing I was noticing and wanted to say, we're chatting back and forth via text. Sometimes the bad guy is just a point of view. They're not necessarily a bad guy except to, quote, good guys. A lot of times the good guys are the winners. And if you sit there and start going, well, bad guys rationalize what their whole way of thinking, so do good guys. It's all a point of view.
Well, I guess probably one of the best current examples of that is what's happening in Ulduar right now. Algalon the Observer, the optional boss, the Titans. Are the Titans good guys or bad guys? They created the world, they shaped it. The creatures that they have locked beneath it are now running rampant, and per their odd bit of logic, they failed and they need to reset the world. So they send Algalon down to hit the big, analyze it and hit the big red button. It's one of those odd things to where, to us, those actions are kind of evil because, hey, look, we have a planet full of life and creation here. But how different is it to them than if we go outside and accidentally step on an anthill?
So that's a very good question. Are the Titans villains?
I'd say no. I'd say that they're neutral beings that are watching and just trying to look after their experiment.
Yeah, they're cold scientists.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is, it's actually kind of funny because some aren't portrayed as such, or at least the aspects that have been imbued by them, the dragon aspects, Malagos, Neltharion, obviously, Sarah, Alexstrasza, and all of them, they were each imbued with a bit of the Titan's power, but they definitely have feeling and emotion.
No, they were supposed to. They were meant to.
Yeah, they were the farthest things, but the idea is because we've not ever encountered an actual Titan outside of the lower end, lower tiered Titanic Watchers and those beings left on Azeroth. So we actually don't know. Like Aman'Thul carries the good half of Sargeras' old sword. Sargeras carries the evil half. I mean, it used to be a singular blade, but when Sargeras went all mad and insane, it chose to split itself because it was semi-sentient, and it will not reforge, it will not recombine for Sargeras, essentially. But Aman'Thul has the good side of that blade, if I remember correctly. So it's an interesting thing. I mean, does that mean, is he still a cold, calculating scientist, or do some of them actually have a concept of good and evil? I mean, they did lock away the quote-unquote evil old gods. Granted,
I don't think they locked them away because they were evil. I think they locked them away because they were going to prevent them from doing what they wanted to do.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know why. I mean, why are they evil? Why are the old gods evil? They've never actually really said what made them evil. Per lore, they were just the first things here, as far as we know.
Ask H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
They're his gods.
And I don't complain about that because I kind of like Lovecraft. Yeah, but those are all very interesting questions. What makes these things evil? Why is this conflict here? I know why the Burning Legion exists. I know why Sargeras is doing what he's doing. I don't know the old gods. I don't know anything about that. Like, what makes them bad? Sargeras is easy. The old gods, not so much yet.
Yeah, they kind of keep to themselves and their purposes and all of that.
Who would be an example of an anti-hero?
An anti-hero would be someone who does heroic type things or non-heroic type things for a good purpose, something he has in mind.
A lot of the Death Knights.
Yeah.
So the Death Knights include those that you're going to be encountering along in the quest line in Northrend, would also be considered anti-heroes?
Well, the good ones, I guess you could say.
They're the ones
Actually,
doing good things.
Yeah, or the non-crazy demon hunters. I was going to throw that in there. Someone who exists.
And which ones are those? Are you talking about like Thalapides in Ashara?
Yeah, I mean, he's out there. Altruis the Sufferer as well, out in the Grand. I mean, they're still bound to evil, but they're trying to do what they believe is good. I mean, Altruis actually even left Illidan's army because he saw that Illidan was going a little bit whacked in the head.
So, who would be considered an insane villain? Have we encountered someone who's completely...
Illidan.
Yes.
Illidan's insane?
Yeah, the little voices talk to him a little too often.
I'm someone who's always felt that Illidan always tried to do the right thing, but in the worst way possible. You know, he was somebody's like, well, I'm going to help everybody, and he just didn't quite get that there's lines you don't cross. And that's, I think, Arthas and Illidan, comparing the two together, you see a lot of similarities, which is probably why they hated each other so much.
Illidan's story is such a tragic view of what the lengths people will go. They're so consumed by the path that they're on that their vision becomes skewed where they do cross those lines. He had such a passion for being the one that was going to save the world, getting Tyrande to notice him, be the one that was better than his brother, that he lost himself along the way. So it just seems that a villain could be someone that gets consumed by their own vision of where they're going, that they exclude everything else, that their vision becomes them instead of them living authentically.
What you're saying there, Star, is what makes a compelling villain. Those are the kind of villains that you want, you know? When you just have the madman who guffaws and says, I'm here to end you. You know, those are in comic book terms, those are the bad guys who are a 2-page stop, you know? Spider-Man sticks them up against the wall with his webbing in a comic book, and you move on to a villain who is scheming and calculating, but for a purpose, for a reason, you know? These big bads that WoW gives us, and part of the reason that this game is appealing is that we have those characters, we have enemies, villains, you can kind of identify with them. At some point, you kind of go, oh, I might do that. And then they reach a certain point and you go, oh, I wouldn't have taken it that far. That's what you do, with really good villains. And that, for me, comes into play when I try to RP a villain, and I don't RP villains very often. And that's kind of the reason is, I think you have to get into the head of a character more and develop why they do the things they do to play a good villain versus just playing a hero.
What is the mindset of a villain? In the case of our radical zealots, the Scarlet Crusade, what is their mindset? Then Harper brought up that the thug villain, when you see Dr. Doom, could you elaborate more on that?
You have the regular thug villain, which was mentioned just a few moments ago, who's the one-page, plot complication who just kind of gets away, normal bad guy. And then you have the great villains on the level of Arthas, Illidan, Dr. Doom, who have a huge backstory, have a huge motivations, have world-changing ideas that they're trying to inflict on everybody else for the betterment of all of us, or not. In the case of Illidan, he wants to do world-changing things. I've always seen, from what I've read of the character, his motivation has always been personal glory. And it's not that he wants to harm everybody, it's like he wants to be the savior. He wants to be the one whose name's in bright lights above, Malfurion.
I mean, in his defense, he was told that he would be. Growing up, that's all that anyone ever said of him. He would do great things. He would be great. He would be awesome. He would be the one known. He would be the one that did these awesome things. And all of a sudden, he reaches that point in his life and completely flips.
It's because he had all the talents.
His brother takes the glory, and
yeah.
Now it's like, what do I do? Holy crap! And then he starts slipping down that path. And
Well, you know where I've seen that story before? I've seen it in Les Miserables with Jafar, who cannot understand why, if he's doing everything correct and he's reached a level of his authority as in the police in France, then why is it this other person who's not following the rules, that isn't doing anything, is getting all the glory, is getting this and that and the other, and he just cannot make peace with himself, and he finally commits suicide in the story. But, well, isn't this the rules you're supposed to go to? Isn't this the way that you're supposed to be? Isn't this the path that you're supposed to follow to reach this an attainment of glory that everyone has been saying that I'm supposed to have? And if that's the case, then why is someone who's not following the rules that's doing this is receiving the glory, and he can't make peace with that?
I'll take it a step further from what you just said, Star, and offer another example of the anti-hero. The villains that we get into are those anti-hero characters, and I'll bring up Paradise Lost and the character of Satan himself, who says it's better to rule in hell than serve in heaven, and you've got a character who the reason he does what he does is because it is the way to move. Now, I guess in a way he's kind of the opposite of what you're saying, but in other ways he's very similar. So
let's see. Well, I was going to mention something about give me a moment. Let me get my words in. I guess when when you're examining a villain, or if you're thinking about becoming or making a bad guy or heavy or something of that nature, you have to realize that there are many levels of such. Basically, you could be a very mercenary person, a thug, as we were stating earlier. You could also be like a corrupt storekeeper, or just a very ruthless person with their own drive and their own motive or means to an end, whatever that is. A lot of that will figure in from their backstory, basically, because most people, at a certain point, something clicked, something happened, and you went off center somewhere. You might want to look into things like how it influenced you, and also, do you have control over it, or does it have control over you? And also, is there any way of recovering from this, or have you gone past the point of no return? And you also have to remember that villains, much like heroes, have flaws, whether they be overconfidence, greed, paranoia, or something that is kind of the thorn in the side of whatever character that they are.
Something that I was thinking about while you were talking about the levels of villainy was that the role player who decides to play a villain, they have to have a reason which sets them down that path. And it has to be something that's valid, not just because they're evil. And so I came up with some interesting ideas. Is the reason that they've gone down this path something that was mystical that happened to them? Maybe somebody cursed them. Maybe it's a medical reason. They have no idea that they're hurting other people. They're just doing what's first in their head. And maybe they have something that happened by drinking a potion. Maybe they just picked a side, these people sounded good, and that's where they're going.
That covers a very good bit. As was stated before, there are a lot of villains out there that don't realize they're being villainous. I mean, they're just doing what they believe needs to be done. And sometimes that's skewed completely wrong, compared to the masses. But sometimes it's a little bit more gray.
I think one of the differences between what constitutes a hero and what constitutes a villain, everybody is striving for what they believe in. People that do strive. The difference is whether or not you care whether you step on people along the way or not, or who gets hurt. If the ends justify the means a little too often, you become a villain.
I haven't played a villain, but I have seen people trying to play a villain do it poorly. The biggest thing is communications, or not communications, but communication. I've seen a lot of people just say, well, I'm going to be a villain and I'm going to be a jerk. And that's what they go for. Instead of saying, hey, out of game, this is just me. This is just my character. You ready? Okay. I'm a really nice guy normally, but here comes the bad guy. And then they play it, because otherwise some people are like, dude, wait, hold on, time out. Why are you being a jerk? It's like, no, it's my character who is being a jerk, not me. And if you don't make sure people understand that it's totally in-character thing, then they're going to think that you're a jerk in general, which I've seen a number of those situations. So the biggest thing of that, I would say, to start it all off is communicate. Hey, I'm going to be a bad guy. I've also seen a lot of times when people play bad guys, they don't have much of a staying power. They're more of in role-playing scenes, it's the temporary bad guy, not the full-on long-term bad guy. Just for scenes, like, okay, we need somebody to be the bad guy for this scene. Okay, come on in and help me out with this little storyline. Okay, goodbye. And it's over.
I think it's because some people don't necessarily want to be a permanent bad guy. They want to be liked even if it's just a character. I've noticed a lot with role players that permanent changes for their character are very difficult to accept. They always want some way out if this path isn't quite right for them. And I think that's why a lot of times you see when they start playing villains, they waffle. They go back and forth. Because, hey, who wants to play the guy that when you log in, everyone's trying to kill?
The villains that we love to hate. So let's hear a few of those.
I say this sort of with tongue definitely planted in cheek, but King Varian. The reason why I say King Varian is, if I get the story right, for about 2 or 3 weeks, he was trapped by the Horde and made to become a gladiator. And he comes back and he's like, the Horde are evil, they must die! Which you compare that to Thrall, and Thrall was for most of his growing life a gladiator for the Alliance's enjoyment. And he's somebody who's like, look, guys, there's more out there than just personal vendettas. And
but that's not really fair in Varian though, because Varian, I did a Lorecrafted article on this one as well. At every turn, at every major point in his life, the Horde has severely reduced Varian's personal family. Let's see, when he was a child, he saw Garona, a half-orc, kill his father because she, quote-unquote, couldn't help it.
After I half-orc.
Still part of the Horde, though, still under Gul'dan's command, which, to a child, that's really all that matters, kind of. Fled across the sea with his second father, quote-unquote, his father figure, Anduin Lothar, to Lordaeron, saw the Horde invade there, saw Anduin Lothar get killed by Doomhammer, so that would be his second father dead. By the way, his home city was razed to the ground by the orcs. Nowadays, bring him back into the current plot, and someone that he considers a brother, Bolvar Fordragon, is killed by the Forsaken, who is supposed to be under this brand new horde that, yay, everyone's good and lovey-dovey sitting around a campfire singing Kumbaya. If that's the case, then how in the heck did this splinter faction of undead crop up and appear? So in all honesty, from his point of view, while I don't agree that Varian's hatred of the horde is justified, I can easily see how he came to be, because pretty much all he's ever seen is the evil of the horde. He has been given no exposure to the good, the noble, or the honorable horde. And here you have Thrall, this great leader, who's letting Garrosh run amok right beneath him. Garrosh, who bowls over Jaina Proudmoore in front of Ronan in Dalaran to attack Varian. And what does Thrall do? He gives him words. That's it. What happened to the Thrall that was ready to throw down and fight with Grom during Warcraft 3 when Grom disobeyed him? What happened to that Thrall? That's not the Thrall we're seeing now. From Varian's point of view, that horde ain't so strong.
That's fine. You have your opinions, and I have mine. No, actually, no, really, Varian's not that bad. He really isn't that much of a villain. That's why I said tongue-in-cheek. But the man, I would be really happy if Garrosh and Varian would just go and kill each other and get it over with, and then the rest of the good guys in the Horde and the Alliance can move on and fight the people who really need to be fought.
Actually, that brings a very good point, because I would actually probably put Garrosh on the list of a villain I'd love to hate, because he's the Varian equivalent. He's that question mark in the whole faction, this whole we want to build up peace.
And
he is that catalyst to shake things up a bit.
Him and Fandel Staghound need to go bowling together.
In Cthulhu's chambers or something.
Okay, so let's talk about Maiev Shadowsong.
Basically, Shadowsong was doing something that she was driven to do, and she was just basically single-minded on this goal, even to the point of putting blinders up to ethics and her original beliefs. She was obsessed with capturing Illidan, making sure he was punished and incarcerated, to the point where she did not hesitate to lie or do whatever she could to get her goals accomplished, which kind of puts her into the kind of like the driven, obsessive hero / borderline villain to some degree, because some would see her as being a villain to some degree, depending on obviously which side of the fence you are as a night elf.
She's a nut.
There's that too.
I would probably qualify. I think she actually does go a little bit into villain. The difference is it's a very limited sphere of influence, because her villainy is only towards anyone within Illidan's sphere of influence, because she lied about Tyrande directly to Malfurion's face and whatnot. She essentially does these underhanded scheming things to advance her purpose of capturing Illidan. It's a single-minded hunt. That she could be considered a villain because of the things that she actually did to just achieve what ultimately is a selfish goal.
What about Rexthar? Isn't that his name? The hero of the Horde?
Rexar is a Mok'Nathal, which means that technically he is half orc, half ogre. He's of the clan of Mok'Nathal. He's one of very few, and they're very looked down upon by the Horde before the opening of the Dark Portal. Rexar goes through the Dark Portal with the orcs. The story as to exactly why escapes me at the moment. But when he does so, he's very looked down upon by the Horde. Remember, he's bigger than most of them. He's definitely got some ogre features. When he goes over, it takes a lot for him to prove himself to the Horde. And really what happens is he proves himself to Thrall, who, if you get Thrall's approval, you get the Horde's approval eventually, because Thrall speaks on your behalf. But that's all played out in, I believe, the epilogue to Warcraft 3, where you begin the founding of Durotar. And that's where his questing mostly takes place. Thar can probably back me up on that.
Yes, the bonus stuff included in the Frozen Throne expansion, because the Horde never had a proper campaign in that expansion, I don't believe. That was the Horde entry of that expansion.
And so in original World of Warcraft, we saw him walking around Disciples because he essentially became the hero of the Horde because of everything he did for them, but he was unhappy. So he and Misha, his bear, took off and started wandering, and we find them wandering in Disciples. I believe if you're Horde, he even has quests for you there. when the Dark Portal reopens, because remember, with Burning Crusade, the Dark Portal really did come back to life, and that was the first time anybody could go through. He went through and found his home, only to find that now that he's been much more accepted in the Horde, the people in his home who were very anti-Horde, those Mok'Nathal, who were originally very anti-Horde, did not accept him at first. And I think by the time you reach him in Blade's Edge Mountains, supposedly his own story goes that he's kind of become their leader and brought them to a greater understanding of the new Horde.
Magatha Grim Totem is what I would call a radical zealot. She's the poisonous viper in the Tauren's nest, fulfilling a dangerous and contrary role like Veramothras or Lady Prester did. Let me explain my thoughts. Magatha is the clan elder of the Grim Totem tribe, a racist group of Tauren who hate all other races and feel that the Taurens should have never allied with the Orcs. The Grim Totems are known for being an aggressive tribe that want to eradicate all the lesser races in Kalimdor. Members of the tribe do not necessarily have to be Grim Totems by descent, but many Taurens who are upset with the path that Cairn Bloodhoof has taken his race down have joined in with the Grim Totem clan. You can find Grim Totem strongholds in Thousand Needles, Stone Talon Mountains, and in Dustwallow Marsh, and anywhere you find them, they are always aggressive to the Horde and the Alliance alike. To obtain her position, Magatha married the former clan leader through an arranged marriage. Somehow, he died in an unforeseen climbing accident. Bumping off your spouse to gain power is one easy way to climb the social ladder and take control. She supposedly tries to undercut Cairn's decisions whenever she can. In the quest a Horde player can start at Freewind Post called An Alien Egg, the player goes on to find a strange egg that the Tauren of the local encampment want to understand. When you bring it to Freewind Post, the egg opens up and out darts a small wind serpent that kills a little dog nearby and then flies off. Some people on WoWWiki believe the wind serpent might be after Magatha herself, and not Cairn as she implicates in the quest chain. Thing is, if you've picked up the Spirits of Stone Talon quest from Cirith Stonebreak in the border between the Barrens and Stone Talon Mountains, there's a quest in that chain that sends you to Magatha Grim Totem. Magatha thinks that the Forsaken can help you with what you need, and she sends a wind serpent, which is her totem animal, ahead to speak with the Forsaken in the Pools of Vision. It's my theory that Magatha tries to lead the player to believe that Arikara is actually after Cairn when she herself might have put this whole plot into motion because of her totem animal. Just some food for thought. So what might this mean to someone's role-playing? Maybe your Tauren character could be a Grim Totem or a former Grim Totem. Maybe she indirectly had your parents killed in one of her clan's raids. You can never get the proof of her guilt since you can't kill her or RP with her. But you can use her as a driving force for your character. Unachievable goals can be something left on the back burner of your role-playing, as something that gives your character a little oomph. You could have a hatred towards her and her tribe, or you could be someone who is entertaining the idea of allying yourself even with her, if you decide to go down that dark path.
Ben Rivendare, an adversary to many that remember him from Stratholme. He was a landlord that was corrupted by Kel'Thuzad and the Plague. A dark aristocrat with a hunger for corruption and a hatred for the fools of the Argent Crusade. He helped build the Cult of the Damned, a group that supported the Scourge. An excellent strategist and leader, the Lich King made the Baron one of his faithful Death Knights. His first post was in the Plague Lands, where he battles the Scarlet Crusade and the Argent Dawn in Stratholme. As they are commonly referred to, the live and dead sides of Stratholme show the different sides of the battle. As players, we act on behalf of the Argent Crusade, and go into the live side to control the zealots known as the Scarlet Crusade. In the dead side, we go forth to fight the Lich King's representative, Baron Rivendare. Baron also had a place within the Four Horsemen of Naxxramas. In fact, Baron Rivendare replaced High Lord Morgraine as leader of the Four Horsemen of Naxxramas after the events of Light Hope Chapel. Truly, the Baron is a fearsome force among the Lich King's forces, and a formidable foe. The Baron is majestic and cruel all at once. He still has many of the elements of his pride and upbringing in his regal demeanor. His white hair is neatly cropped, and his clothing and armor are well tended. Skulls adorn both his armor and his steed's barding. And his eyes, Those eyes are frozen like the soul he has given to the service of the Lich King. He is a merciless villain that will not hold back from murdering hapless citizens if he thinks it will help him. If you would like to know more about these stories, I would suggest exploring Stratholme and Naxxramas. The Ashbringer comics tell more about the events surrounding Light's Hope Chapel, which you experience in the Death Knight starting quest. Out of all of the enemies I have faced in WoW, I dread none more than the Baron.
Villainy surrounds us in the World of Warcraft. We have battled with the likes of Ragnaros, Nefarian, Kael'thas, Illidan, and Kil'jaeden. We sit, poised, upon the precipice of victory over the Scourge once and for all. And yet, for all these enemies that surround us, none has the capability to unmake us as surely and destructively as the discord we have within our own ranks. This fact was most evident in recent Horde history with the betrayal of Grand Apothecary Putris, whose insurrection, fostered and supported by the demon Varimathras, destroyed much of what the Horde had gained in Northrend. It certainly annihilated any possibility of lasting cooperation with the Alliance against the Scourge. And although both Putris and Varimathras have been defeated, this manner of discord continues in a far more subtle and destructive manner. During the Burning Crusade, we were introduced to a Mag'har chieftain named Garrosh Hellscream. This young and untried warrior, son of the famous Grom Hellscream, was beset by Merkblood Broken and his own self-doubt. Through the trials of the Horde who ventured in Nagrand, he was given new hope after an inspiring vision granted to him by Warchief Thrall. In doing this, Thrall gained a bold and daring new overlord, whose strength and determination should have been a monumental asset to the Horde military effort. Instead of this, the Warchief was burdened by Garrosh's recklessness and insubordination. Constantly questioning the goals and methods of the Warchief, Garrosh soon learned that he could speak and act out of turn without more than disappointed chastisement by his superior. This tendency was displayed numerous times over the last months, first when he challenged Thrall during the second Scourge invasion event. There is a great deal of debate on who truly would have been the victor of this interrupted confrontation, but it should be mentioned that no matter the potential outcome, the Horde's unity cracked along the seams. This fissure has only widened in the events since. Garrosh has, on multiple occasions, either suggested outright war with the Alliance or attacked their leaders. He is almost single-handedly responsible for the new tensions and bloodshed that has turned confident strides towards victory over the Lich King into staggering bloody steps through a hedge of enemies on all sides. Is Garrosh truly a villain? This is clearly open to interpretation by each of our characters. There are definitely members of the Horde who would see Thrall deposed in order to carve out a bloody place in the world. Many see the Warchief's leadership as weak and full of compromises that ultimately damage the prosperity of the Horde. Certainly, his counterpart among the Alliance is nowhere near as forgiving or patient. King Varian Rin despises orcs and sees nothing except a pack of green-skinned savages when he looks upon them. But we should each examine Garrosh a little closer, and try not to paint him with such broad strokes. Amongst the orcs, he has a daunting legacy to live up to. His father was one of the fiercest and most important orcs in the history of the entire race, be it for good or bad. For much of the time we were exposed to him during the Burning Crusade, Garrosh was little more than a depressed, ineffectual leader, something he seems to accuse Thrall of these days. Despite his flaws, however, he has proven to be both effective and unflinching in the face of the horrors fielded in battle by the Scourge. Will Garrosh Hellscream be the end of the Horde as we know it? Can his recklessness lead to any real good? This is something we will undoubtedly discover in the coming months as the final confrontation with the Lich King nears. Through his actions at the end of this war, we will be able to determine, truthfully, whether Garrosh is a hero or a villain.
Archmage Aragal. He was known as Archmage Aragal, a mage of the Kirin Tor. Devastated by the destruction of Dalaran during the Third War, and frustrated with the constant Scourge attacks against his brethren, Aragal chose to take matters into his own hands. Using the research from the mage who studied other worlds and extra-dimensional beings, Aragal summoned creatures from outside Azeroth to help fight the undead onslaught. These creatures were the Worgen, the humanoid wolf-like savages that lurk among the forests of Silverpine, and now the Grizzly Hills in Northrend. The creatures were effective against the Scourge, but they soon proved to be difficult to control. Not only did they fight back the undead, but they also turned against the surviving wizards, slaughtering them with no remorse. Driven mad with the guilt of causing further death, Argal adopted the hated Worgen as his own sons and captured the keep of Baron Silverlane above Pyrewood Village. It is here where he retreated, continuing his mad plans behind the safety of the walls. Today, this rundown castle is known as Shadowfang Keep, but this is not the end of Argal's tale. After stealing Shadowfang Keep from the noble baron, Argal then cursed the citizens of Pyrewood. As the day sets and the twilight comes across the small hamlet, the people of the village are cursed to magically transform into Worgen, and they become very inhospitable to outsiders. We know that Argal was eventually killed, but even death was not enough to keep his influence away. As part of his plans in Northrend, the Lich King sent 4 of his dark fallen princes, Keliseth, Valinar, Thoraldris, and Atheron, to resurrect the spirit of Argal and force him to continue his work in the Grizzly Hills. It is here now where the Shade of Argal resides, leading the mysterious wolf cult from Shadowfang Tower on Blood Moon Isle.
Hello, this is Susanna, and Fandral Staghelm is the villain that I love to hate. Villain? Maybe, maybe not. Staghelm currently resides in Darnassus as the Archdruid of the Night Elves, and once was one of the top lieutenants serving under Malfurion Stormrage. When Stormrage went missing from the Emerald Dream, Staghelm took his place as Archdruid, much to the disappointment of Stormrage's confidants and followers. Staghelm is a complicated political figure who is emotionally influenced by the loss of his son in the War of the Shifting Sands. On some level, although not articulated much in the game, he seeks retribution for the loss of his son and possibly seeks whatever means necessary to bring him back. His mental state is questionable and is further convoluted due to his bitter power struggle with Tyrande, Whisperwind, and the Kaldorai's loss of immortality. He is a radical or a zealot of the old ways and believes that the Kaldorai should reclaim their immortality. This burning desire to return the Kaldorai to their rightful place as immortals drove Staghelm to plant the new world tree Teldrassil, in which the city of Darnassus now resides. However, the tree was not blessed by the Lifebinder, and vestiges of its dark taint echo within its boughs. This is seen in the corrupted creatures and the plants, as well as the demons which lurk in the shadows here and there. Something else I noticed, though not specific in the game, most archdruids of power are fully blessed, such as Malfurion and Brol Baremantle, with antlers. This is a sign that the bearer of antlers has great power and is blessed by Cenarius. Perhaps this little fact also drives wedges into Staghelm's mental state. To most travelers, Staghelm is curt and abrupt and complains incessantly about Tyrande. There are rumors about what Staghelm is up to. These whispers include something to the fact that he has some dire plan with regard to the Morrowgrain research. There is always this lingering whisper that there was this other druid involved in the disappearance of Malfurion Stormrage. There is a task early on in which the Night Elves learn a little bit about Staghelm's hot-headedness. This quest is given by Onu, who resides in the Grove of Ancients. Also at level 50, Staghelm sends you after dirt in Ungoro Crater. This quest is followed by Morrowgrain Research, and there is a Horde version of this same quest that's available from Archdruid Rune Totem. And at level 55, Staghelm provides an additional series of quests which start with the New Frontier. Playing an Archdruid, though not necessarily a villain like Staghelm, but in general, I noticed that the main Archdruids from the Warcraft universe, such as Malfurion, Brol, Fandral, Liliandra, Renfarol, they all have green hair, and the males have green beards to match. There are few Archdruids that are known to exist. So if you plan on playing a character that's going to be an Archdruid, that's something to keep in mind.
Well, let's see. Not only do I have a villain for you, I have a very cool mystery-filled quest line that takes place in Duskwood. In the town of Darkshire, there is a mystic named Madame Eva. Through consulting with the cards and having visions, she's having this, this presence of danger and dread associated with her granddaughter Alessa. From there, she went into a trance, and she's come up with a name, the name being Stalvan. And that's what she's handing off to you at level 22 to start a quest on trying to figure out the significance of this name and who exactly is this person or what is this thing. From there, you will do a little bit of travel, so make sure you grab the keys to the van and get some Scooby snacks ready, or just get some good pairs of boots and start your journey. Expect some surprises, but also expect a little bit of XP as well, and some fun. So if you ever really wanted to have your own Duskwood CSI, hey, this is the way to do it. Get some friends, go into Scooby mode and just roll. And the quest line is called The Legend of Stalvan. I have a couple of side notes. Sadly, it is an Alliance quest. Horde, if you would really like to go through this, you can always use a character that you have Alliance side or make one. Or if you've gone through it as Alliance, here's a good tip. You can always make your own story arc, get some people involved, and run through it from the Horde side, and leading up to the same conclusion. Hey, it's worth a shot. It's good role play, regardless, so have fun with it.
This is Harper, and today I'll be speaking of a villain many Alliance players will know and loathe, the wandering undead known as Morladim. In the Ravenhill Cemetery that takes up most of the west side of the Duskwood, many an adventurer in his early to mid-20s has suffered swift and unexpected death at the hands of this patrolling elite killer. One moment, you're casually collecting rot blossoms from small meandering skeletons, and the next, you're looking down at your corpse as Morladim steps over you to seek out his next unsuspecting victim. Alright, so I had a personal grudge, but I'm over that now, mostly. Well, okay, I show up with my level 80 about twice a week just to kick his bony tail around the graveyard out of spite. But beyond that, the story behind this roving undead is a tragic tale of duty and sorrow. The creature calling itself Morladim was once a knight of the Silver Hand named Morgan Lattimore. Morgan served under Uther the Lightbringer against the Orc invasion, and later fought against the undead scourge. Thoughts of his family safe at home helped to shield his sanity from the many horrors he witnessed during the wars. Eventually, he journeyed back to his forest homeland to find it nothing like he remembered. His home was a gutted ruin, the town of Ravenhill was deserted, the forests were corrupted, and the plentiful farms were overgrown and abandoned. Undead now wandered the woods, barely held in check by the watchmen of the small town to the east called Darkshire. Morgan spent weeks seeking news of his family. His search eventually led him to the vast Ravenhill Cemetery and to 3 graves. The shock of discovering his wife and children dead was too much for him, and in a fit of grief, Morgan drew his sword Arceus and mindlessly began to attack the gravestones. Graveyard attendants tried to restrain him, and Morgan then turned his rage upon them. When his anger at last subsided and realization of what he had done came clear, Morgan stabbed himself with his own dagger and died beside the bodies of the 3 innocent men he had killed. He was buried without ceremony on the outskirts of the cemetery, but his grief and guilt would not allow him to rest. Days later, he arose from his grave, consumed by self-hatred and madness. The creature now called Morladim wanders the Ravenhill Cemetery, violently attacking anyone unlucky enough to cross his path.
Welcome to the Lore Library, Hearthstone Tavern's regular segment covering the lore of Warcraft. Every other episode, I, Richard Therian Gracier Powell, will cover a new topic for the show. And for every episode between, my co-host, Matt Taldarian Shatterbound, will do the same. The Lore Library is contributed to Hearthstone Tavern by Lorecrafted, the World of Warcraft lore blog. Go check it out at www.lorecrafted.com. Villains. We love them. We hate them. We want to kick their villainous behinds next week, so we can then farm them repeatedly for loot, right? Yeah, this is a lore segment, not a loot segment. Any butt-kicking here will be done for the good of the story, not for some shiny new purples. So this episode is about villains. And who's the biggest villain in Warcraft lore? It's Arthas, right? No. And it's certainly not Illidan. What about the old gods, Yogg-Saron and Cthulhu? Nah. They're pretty big and bad, but they aren't the big bad. How about Azshara, lurking beneath the waves of the Maelstrom, orchestrating some grand cataclysm that may or may not eventually befall Azeroth? Nope, not her either. It's got to be Kil'jaeden, right? Ah, now we're getting closer. The current ultimate big bad in Warcraft lore is none other than Sargeras, the fallen titan and demon lord of the Burning Legion. So who is Sargeras anyway? I mean, it's a name most World of Warcraft players know vaguely. We see his name on quest items and on a boss or two, but who here truly knows why Sargeras is so bad? What makes him the ultimate villain in this setting? Sargeras is a titan. A fallen titan, to be exact. Brother to Aman'Thul, who is the leader of the Pantheon of Titans, Sargeras was once charged with policing the Great Dark Beyond and keeping the demons of the Twisting Nether in check. He was the champion of the Titans, the leader of their great armies. His skin of molten bronze brought fear to those who had to face his might. He even wielded the most powerful weapon in the known universe, Gorshalak, the Dark Render. As it stood, there was little that could stand against Sargeras' strength and dedication to his brother's cause of order. Indeed, it was the depravity and scheming of the Nathrezim, the Dreadlords, that began to sunder Sargeras' resolve. Unable to fully conceive of such pure evil as displayed by these demons, Sargeras began to slip into a depression, a confusion over whether or not the path of the Titans was correct. This brooding darkness eventually took its toll, and Sargeras renounced the mission of his titanic brethren and left the Pantheon to find his own way. It was out in the Twisting Nether, alone, that Sargeras chose his new purpose, to undo all that his brethren, the Titans, had wrought, to destroy all that had been shaped in the titanic quest to order that which should never have been ordered, to unmake the universe so that it can be corrected from the folly that is the Pantheon's mission. It was here, after Sargeras fell fully, that his semi-sentient weapon, Gorshalak, split itself into two fragments. One of these fragments was kept by Sargeras and reforged into Gorbal, the Dark Seether. The other was eventually retrieved by Aman'Thul and forged into Tayshalak, the Flame Rend. It is said that were a non-evil being ever to possess both fragments, Gorshalak could once again be reformed, but until then, the weapon refuses to allow itself to be used for evil. Taking Gorbal as his weapon, Sargeras sought out the demons he had formerly hunted and imprisoned. He set them free and bound them to his will, organizing them into an army of demons bent on burning all that the Titans had shaped before them. This army is now known as the Burning Legion. Yes, remember them? Warcraft 3, the Burning Crusade, the Sunwell Plateau, that Burning Legion. But Sargeras wasn't satisfied with the demons he had recovered from the Twisting Nether. No, he sought something else. He sought a race that could truly lead the Legion and its infinite ranks. It was this search that brought Sargeras to Argus, homeworld of the magically talented Eredar. Yes, it was Sargeras himself who was responsible for corrupting the Eredar into the race of demons we fight today. Only Velen and those few Eredar who understood the dangers remained pure. It was these Eredar who renamed themselves Draenei, or Exiled Ones, that fled Argus in hopes of finding a safe haven against Sargeras and his Burning Legion. The other two leaders, a pair of Eredar known as Archimonde and Kil'jaeden, became the Dark Titan's second in command. It was Archimonde who was largely responsible for the War of the Ancients that led to the sundering of the world, and it was Kil'jaeden who was largely responsible for the corruption of the orcs on Draenor. So, who is Sargeras? He's only the singular largest villain in current Warcraft continuity. Sargeras and his Burning Legion have strongly affected almost every villainous group in Warcraft lore to this day. Only the old gods have proven themselves to be independent of the fallen Titans' influence, but even they are still entangled in the lore of the Titans. Perhaps next time we'll continue with Sargeras, yes? For there's much more that he's done to this world, and there's much more lore to cover regarding this ancient figure. Especially now that we know he's still out there, watching, plotting, acting. He will return eventually, and when he does, we may see a cataclysm unlike anything Azeroth has encountered in its past.
Hello and welcome to Ria's Corner for the Well-Dressed RPer. Since this segment's about villains, I wanted to touch on how to dress villains this time. Well, really, it depends on the type of villain. Let's go with some concepts. Realize these are just ideas, and you might have even better ways to portray your evilness. But perhaps what I mentioned will trigger an idea if you need one. Let's start with the flashy villain. You're going to want something that has villain written all over it. The Death Knight starting armors, for example, are excellent choices. However, what if you're not a Death Knight? Look at the dark iron armor for plate wearers. Leather and mail wearers could look to the black and Defias armor. If these sets are too plain, spruce them up with some accessories like a tabard or a shirt under the armor. Finally, clothies can look to robes such as a spiderweb robe. Really, just wear dark clothing with an accent color. They want to stick out. They want to look evil. Next one, we're going to do sly. You're going to want to blend in as much as possible. Depending on the area you're in, you just want to be one of the crowd. You don't want anyone to know you've set a gnomish bomb in the bread and it's getting ready to kill Hero Bob. The key here is to pick things that make you blend in to whatever town you're in. Peasant clothes, starting sets, armor and clothing that looks similar to the NPCs. These are all good ideas. Remember, as the sweet barmaid, they'd never suspect you of poisoning Eric. Last but not least, and probably the most fun, is the mad scientist. This is a fun one. If you don't mind picking up engineering, then you'll have everything you need right there. Goggles, anything that makes a strange explosion, changes things, causes side effects. Literally, this is an RP playground for you. Go wild. Engineering is really your go-to place for accessories to really make yourself look like a mad scientist. You can't be too odd. You love your creations and you can't wait to use them on the next hapless victim. Will the bomb explode or is it a dud? They'll never know. These are just a few ideas to look for clothing for these lords of evil. Have fun eviling!
It's time for Wisdom of Huanal. When comparing pets, always remember the live ones are the best. The best vanity pet be the turtle. Why, you ask? It makes the best soup. Thank you, and good hunting.
You have been listening to Hearthstone Tavern Roleplay Podcast, highlighting the RP in MMORPG.